Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. It begins with an exposition on the centuries-long blood feud between vampires and their werewolf counterpart Lycans. 6 months ago humans learned of the supernatural threats and begun a crusade to exterminate the species in an event called the Purge. The governments developed silver weaponry to deal with the Lycans and ultraviolet bullets to slay vampires while trying to create a cure. One night the vampire death dealer Selene fights her way to the city docks to reach the hybrid of both species Michael. He prepares their boat for escape while she avoids a flamethrower and uses exploding shurikens to destroy its operator. When reaching the docks she finds Michael surrounded by agents and is unable to get to him in time before he gets shot mid-transformation. Selene attempts to drag him out of the river but a UV grenade disorientates her, leaving the death dealer to be captured. She's put into cryogenic suspension and held at the antigen laboratory directed by head scientist Jacob, who's in charge of creating cures for the infection and uses Selene along with other powerful beings to run his experiments. Over the next 12 years the government wipes out nearly every vampire and declares the Lycans extinct, when one day Selene's freed by experiment number 1 who leads security away from the lab before she awakens. The death dealer breaks out of the chamber head first to find an empty lab as everyone's trying to capture subject 1. She locates her familiar gear and prepares to leave when Jacob realizes that she's escaped and orders his team to sedate her. They fill the lab with gas to put her out, but Selene leaps through the ducts into the observation room and wants answers to her questions. One doctor sticks her in the back with a scalpel so she lets the other escape while breaking the brave one's arm and returning the favor. She then takes out a hallway of security with the same blade before they know what hit them and is allowed to escape the building by Edward, who hopes that Selene will lead them to the missing experiment number 1. She has a brief run-in with an antigen truck driver that didn't get the memo and puts a bullet in Selene's head, but it isn't a kill shot and she's able to expel the bullet and heal with the driver's blood. Selene searches for any undead survivors but finds the docks have been abandoned for years and everyone's on high alert for her kind. A psychic connection shows Selene part of the city so she rushes over there thinking that it's Michael, only to find Detective Sebastian investigating a brutal murder. He believes Lycans still exist but isn't so sure one would be the cause of this and spots Selene watching them from a bridge. He receives a call about the disturbance at Antigen from a rogue employee and is followed by Selene to a meeting with Dr. Jacob, who insists that none of his test subjects have escaped and assures the detective that he has everything under control. Meanwhile Selene breaks in upstairs and questions Edward on the location of Michael, but he never saw subject 1 personally and just knows that the 2 infected share a psychic connection. The death dealer lets the doctor go like he did her and on impact has yet another vision of the other psychic's location. Beginning at the crime scene the vampire David follows Selene during her investigation, until 3 Lycans emerge from underground and he's forced to reveal himself. He says the few remaining Lycans rarely go above ground unless they're sent for something, and we see them converge on the visionary but Selene saves her just in time. It's subject 1 but isn't Michael and is instead their shared daughter Eve, who she was unknowingly pregnant with at the time of her capture. The 3 strangers flee the scene together while even more Lycans emerge from the sewers and chase them down the street in full view of traffic. They've been sent by their current leader Quint to take Antigen's young experiment and tear apart traffic to get to her. Both David and Eve are bitten by the Lycans in the attack but Eve reveals herself to be a hybrid of both species like her father and handles her own. Once they've killed the assassins with their silver weapons, Selene uses Eve's blood memories to learn that she's the one who released her but has no idea where Michael is. Her wounds from the Lycans somehow not healing like it should, so they take Eve to David's coven hidden beneath a dam outside the city. It's led by his father Thomas who doesn't welcome Selene as she's blamed for the destruction of the entire vampire race. They learn that Eve doesn't need blood to survive but the lack of ever having had it's what's diminished her healing factor. She heals quickly and awakens beside a frozen grotto filled with a lifetime supply of blood bags. Selene receives the devastating news Michael died 12 years ago at the raid on the harbor. David implores her to lead them since she's the last remaining death dealer and his father's leadership's failed them for over a decade. After he's through petrifying the girl some more Thomas tells Selene that they're both to leave for the safety of the coven. But David calls him a coward for hiding the remaining vampires underground and they get into an argument. Selene finds Eve playing with her healing beside the grotto and explains why she's not acting like a mother. It feels like just yesterday she was with Michael on the docks and today she learns that he died and there's a child expecting 12 years of parenting. Meanwhile at Antigen Jacobs found Eve's location but the scientist Lida's developed a motherly bond with her and requests they contact the police. But Jacob wants to keep his operation a secret and has his own plan to bring her back. Suddenly the coven's under attack and Thomas orders everyone to evacuate, but none of them listen to him and instead side with David in fighting back against who they think are humans. They arm themselves with lead bullets when unexpectedly 24 Lycans enter and begin slaughtering the vampires. David orders the Coven to switch over to silver ammo as their current bullets aren't doing anything, while Selene's always loaded with silver and protects Eve from being taken, believing the Lycans just want the hybrid dead because she's such a threat to their species. David takes up a former vampire hunter's whip while another wields a silver sword, but he dies in seconds, leaving it lodged in a Lycan. The girls begin their escape from the fallen Coven when they find David being eaten and save him just in time. He leaves to protect Eve while Selene returns to help any survivors, but the entire Coven of Resistance has died. A giant super Lycan emerges that's unharmed by silver bullets and tosses the Death Dealer around the hall. She drives the silver sword into his back and breaks it off, but he just heals it and leaves Selene unconscious under a pile of rubble. When she recovers, Selene finds that Thomas and the remaining vampires returned and David's mortally wounded. He was unable to prevent Eve from being handed over to the Lycans by his father, and David dies while Selene and Thomas argue over the importance of Eve to the Lycans. She tells him how they must have used her to create the abomination immune to silver, which is the moment he stands down as leader of the Coven. Before going after her kid, Selene uses her unique blood to revive David, as she once drank from the first immortal, and now has the ability to survive in sunlight, where she enlists the help of Sebastian to rescue Eve from Anagen. His suspicions are in a shadow government of Lycans suppressing the knowledge of their species, but Selene sees that the tests that declared the virus extinct were run by Anagen and realizes that Jacob's the Lycan sympathizer. He's not creating a cure to the virus, but instead used Eve's genetic code to create a drug that'll make his Lycan investors immune to silver. Lida enters the lab having discovered Jacob's plan to harvest Eve's remaining blood, but Jacob's revealed to be the father of Quint, who was sent to retrieve the subject and kills the human to keep their secret. The director gives his son another injection to maintain his size, while Quint talks about missing his mother, who chose to remain a human, but Jacob considers her a traitor. On their way to Anagen headquarters, Sebastian says that he was married to a vampire until she was forced into daylight by authorities and killed during the purge. When they get to Anagen, he waits outside while Selene walks straight past the Lycan guards and enters the elevator, then takes it all the way to the top floor, placing explosives along the way. Jacob has Eve brought to the operating room, where he intends to quickly extract Eve's matter and empower his security, when the lift reaches the top and the guards at every level are met by bombs that soak the floors in a silver nitrate gas. Quint alerts his father and they're forced to move Eve out of the building to perform the operation, but run straight into Selene. The head of security sends 3 Lycans at Selene, one of who's killed and used as a ledge for her to leap into the vents. The second's shot in the head while the third's doused with a silver nitrate grenade when the pistols need a reload. Selene drops into a lab and finds that they have the still living Michael cryogenically frozen. When guards enter, Selene shoots them, then the chamber to release Mike, and goes after Jacob, but gets tackled by a Lycan into an elevator shaft. While dealing with it, Quint cuts the cable, sending the lift crashing down, but Selene shoots out the floor before it lands on top of her. He then transforms to protect his father, but Selene reaches him first and tackles the van off its wheels. She kills the 2 charging Lycan doctors attending to her daughter, when Quint arrives and ignores all of Selene's bullets to chase her around the car park. Sebastian intercepts Jacob in the van, but he's obviously injected himself with the Lycan serum and is immune to silver bullets. He prepares to kill the detective, but he's saved by Eve, who's escaped the van and attacks her kidnapper. Jacob transforms into a more Wolfman aesthetic and overpowers Eve as she's still too young, but David shows up, blowing off half the face of the doctor, who barely reacts. The vampire slaughters the remaining Anagen guards while Eve's recovered from the beating and rips the throat out of Jacob. Meanwhile, Selene discovers a super Lycan's biggest weakness is narrow doorways, and forces Quint to revert to his human form to reach her. She then shoves an active grenade into his stomach, which heals over instantly, and he's unable to reach. He frantically tries to change back into a Lycan and withstand the blast, which he does at first until the silver nitrate explosive erodes him from the inside into a bloody mess. Returning to the first hug from her daughter, Selene, David and Eve return to the lab to get Michael, while Sebastian leads the cops in a different direction. The trio find an empty cryogenic chamber when Eve suddenly sees through the eyes of her father that he's on the roof. They get there to find that Michael's already fled and look out over the city as Selene vows to take it back from the Lycans. And the movie ends.